Solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Go ahead and have a seat. And then once you're seated, you can remove your mask, and if you keep your voice up and speak into the microphone, please. Thank you.
Sir, can you please state your full name, spell your last name for the record, please?
Officer Joseph Woodin, Woodin.
Officer Woodin, can you tell the jury where you're employed?
At the Akron Police Department.
What do you do for the Akron Police Department?
At this moment, I'm a traffic officer.
How long are you a police officer?
I am.
How long have you been a police officer?
7 years.
All with the Akron Police Department?
Yes, sir.
Are you a duly appointed peace officer in the state of Ohio?
Yes.
And you said you're assigned to the traffic division of the Akron Police Department?
Yes.
Have you been assigned to other divisions?
Yes.
What other divisions have you been assigned to?
Just basic patrol.
Okay. Officer Woodin, I'd like to draw your attention to April 18th of 2016. Do you recall that date?
I do.
Were you working in your capacity as a police officer for the Akron Police Department on that date?
Yes, I was.
And were you working with a partner? Were you working with someone?
Yeah, I was working with Officer Aber.
Okay. And on that date, were you wearing a uniform, much like the one you have on, and driving a marked police cruiser?
Yes.
Okay. Officer Woodin, did you have a chance to respond to a fire call on Fultz Avenue in the city of Akron on that date?
Yes.
Okay. And can you tell the jury what the address was that you were responding to?
That was 719 Fultz.
And that's located in what city, county, and state?
City of Akron, County of Summit, and State of Ohio.
I'd like to draw your attention to the map. I believe that's next to you. It's marked for identification purposes. And State's Exhibit number 12. You recognize this map.
Yes.
Tell the jury what this shows.
This shows a street coming off east, which is Fultz, and it shows the incident location of the fire that night.
Officer Woodin, when you responded to that scene, can you tell the jury what it was that you saw when you got to that location?
When we pulled up, AFD was already setting up hoses and all that, and the front of the house was completely engulfed in flames.
Can you tell the jury what the first thing you did after you got out of your police cruiser?
Once we saw AFD was already on scene, we started a neighborhood canvass to see if anyone saw anything.
Okay. And did you speak with anyone?
I did.
And who was the first person you spoke with?
Thomas Hughley.
All right. On the document camera next to you, I'm placing a photograph on the document camera. It's marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit number 24. Officer Woodin, do you recognize that photograph?
Yes.
And can you tell the jury who that is?
Mr. Hughley.
Okay. Where was Mr. Hughley when you spoke with him?
He walked over to us as we were walking up to the house.
Okay. And as he walked up to you, can you please describe for the jury what his demeanor was?
Mr. Hughley was very frantic, and he was telling us that there are still people stuck inside the house.
Okay. He was talking to you about the fire that was occurring?
Yes.
And he said what to you?
There were still people trapped inside the house.
Did he know who they were?
Yes.
And did he tell you who they were?
I don't recall.
Okay. At that time, in 2016, Officer Woodin, were you wearing what you would call a body camera at that time?
No.
Okay. And tell the jury, what is a body camera?
It's just a BWC, so it's anytime we make citizen contact, so anyone that's on a call for service or we make a traffic stop, we have to activate that to pretty much document our contact with citizens.
When did the Akron Police Department get those body cameras?
I don't recall. It's been
Okay.
a little while.
Has it been, was it after this fire in 2016?
Yes.
Okay, so you did not have one in 2016?
No.
All right. So he was upset about the fire and he told you there were people still inside?
Yes.
After you spoke with Mr. Hughley, Officer Woodin, can you tell the jury what you did next?
We just started knocking on houses. I knocked on 704, 705, and 706, 734 Fultz. Got answers, but no one saw anything of value. I knocked on 1370 and 1374 Hillcrest and got no answer at the door.
Okay, so you see there on State's Exhibit number 12, 1370 Hillcrest is at the corner of Hillcrest and Fultz. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. You said you knocked on that door?
Yes.
And what door did you knock on? Do you remember which
I
side?
don't recall.
And no one answered.
No answer.
You also knocked on 1374 Hillcrest?
Correct.
Okay. Did anyone answer the door at that time?
No.
Can you describe the daylight? Was it daylight at that time? Was it still dark? What was it like?
It was dark.
Okay. Was the neighborhood lit up though?
Yes.
Why?
With all the fire engines, they normally put like bright spotlights on the house as they work. So there were spotlights lighting up the whole neighborhood and lights from cruisers and also ambulances and fire units.
Could you smell anything?
Yes.
What could you smell?
You could smell just like the burning of, I don't know, I wouldn't say wood, but you could just smell the fire in the air.
Was it, describe the intensity of that smell?
I don't really know how to describe it.
Okay. Was it, could you barely smell it? Could you smell it? Was it really strong?
Oh, it was strong.
Okay. Was this a quiet fire scene or was it loud?
It was loud due to the engines of all the vehicles there on scene running.
After you knocked on those doors, including 1370 and 1374 Hillcrest, what did you do next?
I knocked on 714 Fultz Ave.
Okay. And were you able to figure out who lived there?
Yes.
And who lived there?
Chester Williams.
Chester Williams. Showing you a photograph on that document camera next to you, marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit number 25. Do you recognize that individual?
I do not.
Okay. So if someone previously had identified this as Chester Williams, you wouldn't have any reason to disagree with that, would you?
Correct.
Okay. Now, Officer Woodin, you knocked on that house at 714 Fultz. Without telling us what he said, did you speak with Mr. Williams?
Yes.
Okay. Did you notice anything on his house?
I did notice a camera on the front of his house.
Okay. Did you notice cameras elsewhere on his house?
I just remember cameras on his house.
Okay. Officer Woodin, I'm showing you 5 documents that are marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibits 1 through 5. Can you please take a minute to look through these? Let me know when you're finished. Are you finished?
Yes.
Okay. We're going to go over these photographs individually, but do you recognize these photographs generally?
I don't recall at that time.
Okay. Well, do you recognize the address on the house?
Yes.
And what's the address?
714.
714 Fultz.
Yes.
Street sign here, it says what?
Fultz Street.
And what location?
Hillcrest Street.
All right. What exhibit was that? Say it again. What are you looking at? I was specifically directing your attention to State's Exhibit 1. Fair?
Yes.
And are these photographs fair and accurate depictions of 714 Fultz as you saw them?
Yes.
On April 18th of 2016?
Sustained.
Okay. So you don't recognize these photographs?
I don't.
Okay.
Sorry.
After you noticed the cameras, what did you do?
While speaking with Mr. Williams, he said we could look at the cameras if we needed to.
Okay. What did you do with that information?
I passed it along to the detectives that were on scene investigating the case.
Okay. Judge, I don't have any other questions. Oh, hold on one second. I'm sorry. Officer Woodin, you indicated that you spoke with Thomas Hughley.
Yes.
Okay. And he was upset about what was happening there at the fire.
Could you rephrase that?
Mr. Hughley, you indicated, was upset because of what he saw there at the fire. That's what you previously testified to.
Yes.
Okay. And what did he tell you about his conversation with the people inside of the house?
Overruled, you may answer.
He was just stating he went around back and he was telling them to jump from the second floor window.
Okay. I don't have any other questions, Judge.
Thank you. Mr. Riley?
Judge, we don't have any witnesses for this officer, or any questions for this officer. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Officer Wood, you may step down.
Thank you.
Call your next witness.
We're going to call Officer Aber to the stand.
George, right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Go ahead and have a seat. Once you're seated, you may remove your mask, and then if you keep your voice up and speak into the microphone, please.
Sir, can you please state your full name, spell your last name for the record, please?
Thomas Aber, A-B-E-R,
And where are you employed?
Akron Police Department.
Sir, could you just move the document camera, if you can move it towards the wall there?
Okay, yeah, it's on the screen. Yep, the other way. Yeah, all right.
Are you good?
Thank you. You work with the Akron Police Department. What do you do for them?
Currently, I'm a detective at Major Crimes, Midnights.
And how long, to your police officer?
Yes,
How long have you been a police officer?
7 years.
And all with the Akron Police Department?
Yes,
How long have you been a detective?
8 months.
Prior to becoming a detective, what did you do?
I worked uniform patrol.
And Officer Aber, have you been assigned to any other divisions of the Akron Police Department?
No,
I'd like to draw your attention to April 18th of 2016. Do you recall that date?
I do.
And were you working in your capacity as a police officer for the Akron Police Department on that date?
Yes.
Were you working with anyone?
Officer Woodin.
And were you wearing a uniform, much like you have on?
Yes.
Driving a marked police cruiser?
Yes.
Officer Aber, can you tell the jury, did you have a chance to respond to a fire on Fultz Avenue in the city of Akron on that date?
Yes, I did.
And when you arrived there at that scene on Fultz Avenue, tell the jury what you saw.
We pulled up and the house was fully engulfed, and we observed the fire department starting to put water on the house.
Okay. I'm going to direct your attention to that map there. Marked as States Exhibit number 12. Do you see that map?
I do.
Okay. Is that roughly the neighborhood that you responded to?
Yes.
When you arrived on scene and you saw the house was on fire, can you tell the jury what you did?
At that point, I pulled the car next to Fultz and East Avenue to block the traffic, and I observed a male who was moving his vehicle, and I helped him maneuver his vehicle around the fire trucks.
Do you know that male's name?
Nicholas Costa?
Did he tell you where he lived?
Yes, he lived at 725 Fultz.
And can you please point to the jury, you can get up if you need to, and just point to the jury where 725 Fultz is located. Officer Aber, I'm going to show you. Officer Aber, I'm going to show you a series of documents that are marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibits 17, 18, and 19. Can you please take a minute to look at those and let me know when you're finished? Recognize these photographs, sir?
I do.
Okay. State's Exhibit number 17, just generally tell the jury what this is.
It's a picture of a male, Nicholas Costa.
Who lives on Fultz Avenue.
He lives on Fultz Avenue.
Right. You pointed to a house in this direction. If I told you this was 725 Fultz, would you have a reason to disagree with that?
No.
Okay. So this is where he lived there.
Okay.
Fair? Okay. State's Exhibit number 18 and 19, these photographs, briefly describe what they show.
Looks like a male in a driveway.
Okay. Does the male in these photographs have hair?
Doesn't look like he does.
I'm sorry, what are those numbers?
Judge, can we approach real quick?
Yeah, can you tell me what those numbers are, please?
17, 18, and 19.
I have other numbers.
Yeah, no, I messed up. I'm sorry.
Hold on.
Don't you have that?
Yeah.
32, 33, and 34.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Scott. Officer Aber, I'm showing you on the document camera there that you turned behind you. A photograph that's been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit number 32. This is the photograph of the man that you spoke with,
Yes.
Nicholas Costa.
Yes.
Okay. State's Exhibit number 33, I'm putting on the document camera here. You see this photograph here?
Yes.
This is State's Exhibit number 33. This is the bald individual that you referred to?
Yes.
Okay. Who lived at 725 Fultz?
Correct.
Okay. And then also State's Exhibit number 34. Do you see that individual in that photograph too?
I do.
And is this him there that I'm pointing to?
Yes.
Did you speak with Mr. Costa?
I did.
And when you spoke with him, can you please describe his demeanor to the jury?
He was frantic and upset.
Okay. And was he describing to you an event that had just recently occurred?
Yes.
The fire?
Yes.
Tell the jury what he said.
He said that he was laying in his bed and he saw a bright flash and heard an explosion, and he looked outside and saw the neighbor's house, the front porch on fire.
What did he do then?
He ran outside the house,
And did what?
moved his vehicle.
And then that's when you came along.
Correct.
Okay. Judge, I have any other questions?
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, officer.
Good afternoon.
Is it Aber or Aber?
Aber.
Aber, I apologize. And it's detective now, correct?
Yes.
Back in 2016, it was patrol officer, correct?
Correct.
And you're dressed today like a patrol officer would, correct?
Yes.
Where Detective Looney looks more detectively, so to speak, correct?
Correct.
And when you work now, not required to wear the dress or the working blue uniform. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. But on that day, you had something similar on. Is that also fair?
Yes.
All right. Let me introduce myself. I apologize. I'm Joe Gorman. This is Scott Riley, and together we represent Mr. Ford. So I have a few questions for you, and I would ask you to ask me to rephrase or repeat those questions if you don't understand. Okay?
Okay.
I have a copy of your action taken that you completed back in 2016. Did you only complete one report as it relates to this case?
Yes.
Okay. And we'll talk more about an action taken in a moment, but you had an opportunity, I'm assuming, to review your action taken in preparation for your testimony today. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. And if you need to look at it at any point in time before answering any of my questions, let me know and I'll provide it to you. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. So you've gone through the police academy.
Yes.
Yes. And every officer that's certified in the state of Ohio has to do that. Is that fair?
Yes.
How long is the police academy for you? How long was it?
Around 8 months.
Okay. So it's an extensive training to become a police officer. Would you agree?
Yes.
It also doesn't stop there. Once you become a police officers have on-the-job training as well, correct?
Yes.
Continued training, am I right?
Yes.
And then to become a detective, is there additional training?
Yes.
Okay, what does that consist of in general?
Core criminal classes, getting certifications.
Okay. And that's more, a patrol officer like you were in 2016 is someone who initially responds to a scene for the most part, am I right?
Yes.
In a major crime, and you said you're in the major crime unit now, a major crime, a patrol officer might be first on scene, but then the detectives would be called in. Is that fair?
Yes.
When we talk about the detectives, we talk about detectives such as yourself in the major crime unit, right?
Yes.
That handle the robberies, the rapes, the murders, the aggravated burglaries, things of that nature. Is that fair?
Yes.
All right. And then there are other detectives that come that are part of the Akron Police Department, kind of like we see on CSI, but we call it the crime scene unit, correct?
Yes.
And they come in a big truck, usually at a major crime scene, am I right?
Yes.
And they are taught in how to collect forensic evidence at a crime scene. Is that fair?
Yes.
And those detectives might take things, in the appropriate cases, they might take things like fingerprints from scenes, correct?
Yes.
They might try and collect swabs for DNA analysis, correct?
Yes.
Things of that nature. They do those types of things. They might collect ballistics, or correct?
Yes.
Guns, correct?
Yes.
Bullets, case shells, things like that. They might collect those things, preserve them, and they're taught to do those in a way that preserves, to the best of their ability, the evidentiary value of those items. Is that fair?
Yes.
And they work along with you as a major crime scene detective. They work along with you and kind of take direction from you as the crime scene detective, what is and what is not important to be looking at, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So this case happened over 5 years ago now. Do you agree with me?
Yes.
Okay. One of the things that you're taught in police academy training is how to memorialize or document the things that you do as a police officer as it relates to whatever part of the investigation you have. Is that fair?
Yes.
And as a patrol officer, although you may not be in charge of the scene, anything you do, for instance, the going door to door to the houses and trying to get statements from people, that would be something that you would document in a report. Is that fair?
Yes.
Now we have incident reports, which are pretty the most basic of a police report. I arrived at scene. These are the potential witnesses, and this might be a very short summary of what the alleged crime is. Is that fair?
Yes.
And then there is something called an action taken. Is that fair?
Yes.
Now that's a little more of a detailed report in which you lay out the steps you took in the approximate times you took them while you were on scene. Is that fair?
Yes.
And then we have something called a report of investigation. And that is what normally the detectives that are in the major crime unit put together about what they do and what other people have done during the course of the entire investigation. Is that fair?
Yes.
And that would be very detailed in a major crime scene. Is that fair?
Yes.
The action taken is also supposed to be as detailed as you can make it. Is that fair?
Yes.
And the importance of doing that, whether it's an action taken or a report of investigation, would be to memorialize exactly what took place at the crime scene when the police arrived. Fair?
Yes.
What they did during the course of their investigation. Fair?
Yes.
What witnesses they actually talked to. Fair?
Yes.
At least a summary in that action taken or report of investigation of what those witnesses told the police on scene. Is that fair?
Yes.
And that's important because you may find yourself sitting on a witness stand like you are right now, over 5 years later, having to tell these folks on this jury what it is you did, correct?
Yes.
And the prosecutor asked you to tell him what it is that Mr. Costa said, correct?
Yes.
You obviously want to get that right, am I right?
Yes.
And I would imagine for most Akron police officers that between April of 2016 and August of 2021, you may as an officer be involved in hundreds of crime scenes, correct?
Yes.
And you certainly don't want to confuse one crime scene with another crime scene when you're testifying from that stand, correct?
Correct.
One of the ways we try and avoid that happening is you would agree that wouldn't be fair to either side, correct?
Correct.
And it certainly wouldn't be fair to this jury who would be getting information that wasn't accurate. Is that fair?
Yes.
One of the ways that we make sure that doesn't happen is, as a police officer, you're taught to go back and review the report that you put together close in time to when you did it, correct?
Yes.
And that's what you did properly in this case, fair?
Yes.
As it relates to a report of investigation, you are now in the process, the last 8 months anyway, of putting those types of reports together. Is that fair?
Yes.
You would agree the report of investigation is even more detailed than an action taken. Is that fair?
Yes.
And a report of investigation sometimes not only includes what happens on the crime scene, but it should, if the investigation is ongoing, it should document every time a detective continues that investigation in the following days, weeks, months, or even years. Is that fair?
Yes.
So that an attorney such as myself or a prosecutor such as Mr. LaPrenzi can later on look at that report of investigation and understand what led detectives or officers to do certain things, correct?
Yes.
And we also may learn things that the officers did not do by looking at that report of investigation. Fair?
That's fair.
Because if they did them and they had any significance whatsoever to the case, we would find it in the report of investigation, would we not?
Yes.
That's what you're trained to do. Fair?
Yes.
You went to 730 Fultz Avenue, correct?
Yes.
Okay, do you want to look at your report?
If you don't
Sure,
mind.
sure. May I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
Officer, I want you to take the time to read that report. It's 1 page in length, correct?
Correct.
Single space, correct?
Correct.
I don't want you to read the report out loud. I want you to read the report, and then I'll ask you a few questions about it, but I'm kind of concentrating on 730 volts, okay?
Okay.
Okay, and you can refer to it anytime you want. The only thing I would ask you to do, if I ask you a question, and I don't have many more anyway, by the way, but if I ask you a question and you're actually getting your answer from the action taken rather than your memory, I just would ask that you indicate that for the record. Is that fair?
That's fair.
Okay. And before I get there, Detective, before I get there, when the prosecutor had asked you where 725 Hills was, and you said somewhere down in here, you recall that?
I do.
You certainly, I don't want to assume or speak for you, you certainly weren't trying to intentionally mislead this jury, correct?
Correct.
It's been 5 years, correct?
Correct.
You may not have been back to that street before, correct?
Correct.
Which kind of emphasizes the need for the reports of investigation to be fair and accurate. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. Once again, don't want to make you feel like I think you intentionally did that. I didn't, okay? Do you recall where 730 Fultz was, sir?
I do not.
Okay. Mimic the prosecutor. If I told you that 730 Fultz was here, would that make sense to you?
It would.
Okay. Why that right, Scott? Sir, do you recall going to 730 Fultz that night and attempting to talk to whoever was inside?
I do.
All right. Do you recall, sir, that that house was pink at the time?
I don't recall that, no.
Okay. Do you recall, sir, that that house had a video camera on its outside?
I do not recall that, no.
Okay. You talked to somebody in that house, is that fair?
Yes.
And who did you talk to, sir?
And we're going to read it off from here. Brandon McGruder.
Okay. And once, for the record, you didn't have an independent recollection of the gentleman's name. You relied on your report of investigation, your action taken, I should say, to get that information, correct?
Yes.
But because you did that close in time, you're confident that that's the person that was actually in that house that you spoke to, correct?
Yes.
All right, fair enough. Did you, sir, know when you talked to him how many people were in that house at the time, in his house at 730 Fultz, while he came to the door to speak to you?
No.
So if there were other people in the house, you wouldn't have known that?
I don't recall.
Okay. Did he come to his front door, if you recall?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Thank you, officer. Detective, congratulations on the promotion. I don't have any further questions for you at this time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Foreman. Mr. D'Angelo, redirect.
Detective Aber, Mr. Gorman asked you about your conversation, not specifics, but asked you about your encounter with Brandon McGruder at 730 Fultz. You remember that?
Yes.
Cross-examination, line of questioning and cross-examination. If he had seemed out of breath, would you have noted that in your report?
I believe so, yes.
If he had smelled like charcoal lighter fluid, would you have noted that in your report?
Yes.
If he had smelled like smoke, would you have noted that in your report?
Yes.
I don't have any other questions.
Nothing, Your Honor.
All right, Detective, you may step down. If you'll replace your mask and you can exit through that door, thank you very much. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it's a little earlier than I would have liked, but that's it for the day. That's all they have subpoenaed or summoned to appear for testimony. Remember, tomorrow's going to be our half day. We're going to start at 9. We'll be done by 12 or 12:30. I do have a calendar that Mr. Mason just printed off for you to take. I just want to explain a couple things. We have a couple, scheduling things we're trying to work around. So instead of doing a half a day next Wednesday, that would be the 8th. Monday, of course, is a holiday, so we're not here. You're going to have a 4-day weekend. So Tuesday, the 7th, we're not coming in. And then Wednesday, the 8th, instead of a half day, we're going to go a whole day, but we're not, I would say that, but we're not starting until 9:45. So I'm going to ask that you be here about, 9:35, 9:40, and we'll start promptly as soon as everyone's here. That'll be 9:45 on Wednesday and Thursday of next week, which is the 8th and the 9th. And then Friday we'll be back to 9 a.m. to 4:30. And then the following week, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, we're gonna go full days. And that's because there's a potential that the state then could be done with their case in chief, is what we call it, by that Wednesday afternoon. We're then gonna take Thursday the 16th off, and then if there's any testimony that the defense wishes to present, they'll either do that Wednesday afternoon or Friday, and then we may be done with the evidence portion by then. But the 16th is also designed to accommodate some people's schedule, as well as give the court and counsel the opportunity to work on what are going to be some lengthy jury instructions and a lot of things that we need to work out. So we're going to be working even though we won't be in court. So Ken will have a copy of that you can pick up on your way out. I will remind you of the admonition I've given you at all breaks and at the end of the day. First of all, leave your notes upside down on your chair. We'll collect them. Do not discuss the case amongst yourselves or with anyone else. This includes your family and friends and the media. You must not post or read anything about this case on the internet or any other electronic device, including your cell phone. Any such discussion, if discovered, could result in a mistrial and would severely compromise the party's right to a fair trial. Do not permit anyone to discuss it with you or in your presence, and do not form or express an opinion on this case until it has finally been submitted to you. So we will see you tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. and we will proceed at that time. We're adjourned.